Hi everyone, as promised, it's 7 p.m. and it's Wednesday, and I'm here live to talk to you right now about it's Thursday. Hey, it's not Wednesday. Wednesday is, thank you, Matt. Wednesday is the day we release the podcast, of course, and Thursday is the day I go live. Excellent start, I feel. Obviously needed another coffee today. So Matt has joined us already, so he's here. If you have any questions, he will field them my way. Thank you if you're watching this later. It's awesome to see you. Please remember that the podcast is available for you to download at any time. And we have excellent news because the podcast is now available on iTunes, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and our website. So whether you're an Apple person or an Android person, we've got you covered. And of course, the podcast itself is called the Reflective Teacher Podcast, and we are now 3 weeks in. And this week, I promised that I would focus on the secrets of successful evidence gathering. What is it that you can do to make sure that you feel confident that the artifacts that you've gathered, that the evidence that you're writing is actually hitting the mark and meeting the maximum number of focus areas, meeting the maximum numbers of standards as you can. So that is exactly what episode 3 is all about. It is about cracking the code and unlocking the secret to success when it comes to evidence in your portfolio. Now, as always, hey Jess, nice to see you. As always, there is a freebie that you can download, and you can head to edufolios.org/003 and grab yourself a copy of Cracking the Focus Area Code. Now, I designed these little worksheet booklety things to help focus you on the key ideas and to help your brain connect with them and keep them up there forever. So what does this guide have in it? Let's have a look. Well, first of all, I talk a lot about this triangle. It's not the conjoined triangles of success, for those of you who love Silicon Valley, I'm afraid, but it is actually a triangle that represents the way in which we think about the standards. We know there are 7 standards, there are 4 career stages, that there are 148 of these beastie focus areas already sat there waiting for you to cover during your career, from graduate to lead. But what we often forget is this bottom bit here. That bottom bit is the descriptor, specifically for the focus area in the career stage. And that is where we learn to crack the code, because the keys, the secrets to success are right here in this descriptor. And this walks you through exactly how to do that. I also tell you to beware, because as always, there are some tricky standards and focus areas that could be flipped and misinterpreted. So I give an example in this one of a standard 5 and a standard 2 focus area that are often flipped around, because the standard 2 focus area I've chosen is 2.3, and that's curriculum assessment and reporting. And curriculum assessment and reporting has the word assessment in it. So often we accidentally focus too much on that and pop it into standard 5. And that is why that triangle is important, because you do always have to know where you are at the top before you dive in. Trust me on this, the language in here is really important. And in fact, there's actually a secret key. I know, exciting, right? Who knew there were codes to crack in the standards? Basically, there are 3 elements to every focus area. That is the verb, the thing you're going to be doing, the what you're doing that to or for, and the why you're doing it. And we talked in last week's episode about the spheres of influence and how that will change, that why will change. At graduate, it's very much, I'm doing it to learn about theories and some ideas I might put into practice. At proficient, it's all about the impact. I'm doing this to impact on my students and their outcomes. Highly accomplished, that expands, remember, out to our colleagues, as well as high impact on our students, and then lead to our site. So these descriptors will give you clues. If you're like me and sometimes your evidence jumps between career stages, I actually have graduate evidence in my portfolio, and I've been teaching for over, I don't know, a decade and a half. It's getting too long, a long time for me. And the reason I have graduate evidence in my portfolio is because a graduate piece of evidence is about learning something new and not having had an opportunity yet to put that into practice and demonstrate the impact it's had. Now, I love to learn, I love to read, I love to go to PD, I love listening to podcasts, so I learn lots of new things. And if I choose to write about those new things without writing about how I might use them and how they may impact my students, or without providing evidence of that impact, then I'm still a graduate. And that's fine, because I'm at the beginning of that journey. I will go away and I will put into practice what I've learned, then it will become proficient, and perhaps I'll share it with colleagues, and it becomes highly accomplished when I can gather the impact I'm having on them, and so on. All right, so don't worry too much. But when you look at those descriptors, it will tell you not only what artifacts you need. So for example, in here, in the 2.3, we need curriculum assessment and reporting knowledge. In standard 5, we need assessment strategies. And this is a graduate, this one. And if you go forward, you'll see that I give it you at proficient, highly accomplished, and lead, and give you the job of identifying the verb, the what, and the why to get you practicing. And you'll see how that changes, because the language in here gives you all the clues you need. Now, if you want more information about how that works, then obviously head to edufolios.org/003. And you'll be able to download the podcast and that wonderful document that you can work through. And the podcast goes through all of it a lot more slowly and in a lot more detail, which will benefit you if you're thinking, crikey, okay, slow down, Selena. Well, that's what the podcast is for. The live here today is to give you an opportunity to connect. It's great to see people popping in and out this evening. It's really good to see and to have you here. Now, after I launched the podcast this week, there were 2 questions that I received. One via Twitter, and you can find us on Twitter at Edufolios, and one via Instagram. And it will surprise you to hear that we are also Edufolios on Instagram. The first question that I had was about these podcasts and how they're listening to the podcasts, but they're not sure how they could then use that as evidence of professional development. And that's a really good question, because yes, taking part in these kind of lives and having conversations in these lives and also listening to the podcasts can and will count as professional development for you. Well, if you have an Edufolio or a portfolio where you're gathering your evidence, it should be as simple as writing down what you listened to, what you got out of it, and what you are going to do with that information next. It should be as simple as that. And what you got out of it should align itself back to the standards, whichever focus areas and whichever career stage you might be at the time. If you were to be very brave, or I say I should be brave, you can head to my Edufolio if you want. My Edufolio is edufolios.org/Selena Woodward. I'll get Matt to post that link in the comments for you. And I think the last piece of evidence I wrote was actually me reflecting on a reading I'd done around gifted education. So you can see exactly what I mean. Now, I always say to people that I like to talk and I like to write, and I've written way more than I needed to. That's just who I am. I'm a bit of a Hermione. Don't hold that against me. I've met a few Hermiones in my time. We love it. All right, so I like to write a lot. You don't have to write as much as that. However, bearing in mind what we learned in this particular podcast, it would be wise to look at the language of the descriptors of the focus areas and to try and use some of those verbs, some of those words in the what, and some of those words in the why to support what you're saying. That will really make sure that that piece of evidence about the podcast or about the book you've read or about the webinar you attended or even the face-to-face PD, because they're all going to be treated exactly the same way in your folios. All of those pieces of evidence need to be written about. It isn't going to be a piece of evidence that will count against any focus areas if you just write, I listened to a podcast and I did it for X number of hours. That's not going to get you any points against the focus areas. If you listen to this podcast and you feel that that's going to enable you to reflect on your practice, to increase collegial conversations, standard 6, that you're networking by coming to these live events, standard 7, etc. You can see how you can suddenly start pulling in some of that language and using Twitter feed conversations on Twitter chats, podcasts, etc. to create evidence. I'll create a podcast on this, and I'll go into some detail and perhaps provide some examples for you in that podcast if you like. So listen out for that. That was a really, really great question. The other question that I had this week was around time and how do I plan to reflect and how do I make time? Well, about 18 months ago, Kat, who will probably go, oh, she's mentioning me again. Kat is one of our Showcase Edufolio's users. Kat's Edufolio is actually available as one of the examples. But about 18 months ago, I actually chatted to Kat on exactly this topic. Now, Kat is a busy educator at a special needs school who is a shining example all about how to reflect regularly, but not so regularly that you're wearing yourself out. And getting that balance right can be tricky. And if you look on the Edufolio's blog, so edufolios.org/blog, you'll find a post there which talks specifically about how Kat planned her reflection time and mapped out what she was going to talk about in her Edufolio. And I know that she followed that for a while. Now, perhaps, Kat, maybe I should chat to you about that in the podcast, and maybe we could get some of those tricks and tips that you have and that I have together and share those with everybody. It's really, really great that I get these questions from you. And I would really encourage you to tweet to us, to use Instagram. I've got a story on Instagram right now where you can ask any question you like and it will send it to me. Go there right now, find us on Instagram and ask the question that you have about accreditation, about portfolios of practice, about reflective practice, anything to do with that professional development. Ask away, because those questions, I promise you, will turn into either a podcast or a short answer from myself here. As much as I can answer it, I will do so, and as much as I can talk about it in a podcast and maybe provide you with some guidance on that, I totally am on board with that. That is what I'm here to do. At Edufolios, we are all about celebrating successes and making sure that you can see those successes and celebrate them too. That's super important, lifting you up so you can lift up all the little people or middle-sized people if you're a high school teacher in your life and help them to be the best they can be, because you know you're being the best that you can be. So thank you again for joining me. It's been great to see some of you popping in and out. Always remember that I'm here to answer any questions that you may have. And I'll be back again next Thursday. See, I got it right this time. I'll be back again next Thursday at 7 p.m. We will have another podcast released on Wednesday morning. And if you are a member of Edufolios, you will get notified about that podcast in your inbox. I hope you've been enjoying receiving those emails from us and getting those really cool updates and opportunities to download and work with some of these materials. And finally, head to edufolios.org/003 to listen to this week's podcast, where I delve deeper into what we've just talked about around focus areas and annotations, and to grab your free, go for it. Have a wonderful evening. Keep the questions coming, and I will see you next week. Take care.